Welcome to a slow, beginner-friendly lesson on reading CloudWatch logs for a Python Lambda, made for absolute beginners. Logs first. Last lesson you invoked a function and read its return value. But what about the things the function prints along the way? Those do not show up in the response file, they go somewhere else. Today you learn where. Every Lambda writes its output automatically to a service called CloudWatch logs. We learn the log group naming pattern, how to list groups, how to read the latest events, and how to tail logs live while you invoke. Find the output. Here is the layout for this lesson. A folder named logs_project. Lambda_function.py is the same handler, but this time we will add print statements and logging calls so we can watch them appear in CloudWatch. Event.json is a payload you can invoke with. iProject.toml holds project metadata. The interesting part of this lesson is not in the folder, it is in the AWS logs. The interesting part is in the cloud. Create the project with UV in it, then change into the folder. Confirm the AWS command line is installed with AWS version, and that your profile and region are set with AWS configure list. Optional, install JQ through Brew to make JSON responses easier to read. Everything we do in this lesson runs through the AWS CLI against a Lambda you already deployed. Tools first. 3 commands cover most of what you do with logs. Describe-log-groups lists every log group whose name starts with the Lambda prefix. Get-log-events reads the events from a specific log stream. Tail follows a log group live, like tail-f on a local file. We will walk each one in detail. The shape is list, read, tail. List, read, tail. Your function runs, but where does its output go? Today you learn the answer, and how to read it. Where does it go? Here is the handler with 2 print statements added. When you invoke this function, the return value goes to response.json, but the prints do not. They go to CloudWatch logs automatically. You do not configure this, AWS wires it up for you. The lesson here is simple: whatever your function prints, or sends through the logging module, lands in CloudWatch. That is your eyes into the running function. CloudWatch captures it. Every Lambda gets a log group with a predictable name. The pattern is always /AWS/Lambda/ the function name. If your function is my-func, the log group is /AWS/Lambda/my-func. You never have to guess. Once you know the function name, you know the log group. This is the single most useful fact about Lambda logging: it removes the mystery of where to look. The pattern is everything. Run AWS logs describe-log-groups with the prefix /AWS/Lambda, and you get every Lambda log group in your account. The response is a list of log group names, plus useful metadata like creation time and stored bytes. If you forgot what functions you have, this is one way to find out. Every deployed Lambda shows up here. Save the name you care about, you will use it in the next commands. List them all. Here is how a single line of output reaches your eyes. The Lambda function runs. Inside it, you call print or use the logging module. AWS captures that output automatically. The output lands in a CloudWatch log stream under the function's log group. You run AWS logs get-log-events, and the events appear in your terminal. 5 steps, end-to-end, all automatic except the last one, which is your reading. Print to read. Every Lambda gets its own log group with a predictable name. Once you know the pattern, you can find logs in seconds. Predictable names. Reading events takes 2 steps. First, find the latest log stream with AWS logs describe-log-streams, sorted by last event time, descending, with max items 1. That gives you the name of the most recently active stream. Then run AWS logs get-log-events with the log group name and that stream name. The response is a list of events, each one a timestamp and a message string. Read one stream. Lambda creates a new log stream for each invocation, or sometimes reuses one. The stream names are long and contain timestamps and hashes, like 2024/09/01/$latest ABC123. You almost never type them by hand. Use describe-log-streams with the -- query filter to pull just the most recent stream name, then pass it to get-log-events. Sort by time. You have 2 ways to write output. Print is fast and simple, but every line is unstructured text. The logging module gives you levels, info, warning, error, and adds timestamps automatically. In phase 0.9 you learn the logging module on your own machine. In Lambda, it works the same way. Get a logger with logging.getLogger, set the level to info, and emit messages with logger.info. The output lands in CloudWatch, just like print, but it is easier to search and filter. Prefer logging, a powerful pattern, log JSON strings instead of plain text. Inside the handler, build a dictionary with the fields you care about: message, name, the AWS requested from context, and JSON. Dumps it before logging. CloudWatch then sees each log line as a structured record. You can search by requested, filter by name, or build metrics from the fields. Structured logs cost nothing extra and pay off the first time you debug a real issue. JSON is easier to search. When something fails in the cloud, logs are your eyes. With them, debugging feels calm. Without them, it feels blind. Calm debugging. AWS logs tail shows you recent events, and with -- follow it stays open and prints new events as they arrive. Open two terminals side by side. In the first, tail with follow. In the second, run AWS Lambda invoke. The moment the function runs, its prints and log lines appear live in the first terminal. This is the closest thing to a print statement you can see in real time. Use it whenever you are debugging. Follow in real time. A few patterns show up again and again. Cold starts. The first invoke after a deploy is slower because Lambda initializes the runtime. Timeouts. If your function runs longer than its configured timeout, AWS kills it and writes task timed out. Unhandled errors. A Python traceback appears in the logs, including the file, the line, and the exception type. Reading these patterns is the daily work of debugging Lambda. The traceback is your friend. Read the traceback. Here is a real debugging walk. You invoke, but the response is wrong: hello world instead of hello Ada. Tail the logs. Re-invoke. The logs reveal, name received is none. That means the event has no name key. Either the payload is missing the key, or the handler is reading the wrong field. Fix the payload, redeploy if needed, try again. The logs turn a guess into a fact. That is the value of logging. From guess to fact, quick self-check. Can you say the log group naming pattern from memory? Can you list the 3 commands you use to read logs? Can you describe the difference between print and the logging module in Lambda? Can you explain why tail with follow is the fastest debugging tool? If any feels shaky, rewatch the matching part. The goal is calm debugging. Say each out loud, hold the whole picture. Every Lambda writes its output automatically to a log group name /AWS/Lambda/ the function name. Print statements and the logging module both land there. Read events with get-log-events, or follow them live with tail-follow. Structured logs, JSON strings, are easier to search and filter than plain text. Logs are your eyes into a function you cannot step through. Logs are your eyes. You now have the full Lambda loop: deploy, invoke, debug. The next lesson closes the loop. We delete the function, the IAM role, the basic execution policy, and the log group. We confirm the AWS billing console shows 0. Then we step back and wrap up the entire phase of course, what you can now do, and what comes next. Create, use, destroy, verify. Cleanup is next. When you have hundreds of events, scrolling does not scale. AWS logs filter -log -events lets you search. A simple filter pattern like the word error matches any event whose message contains error. A JSON-style filter pattern, curly brace $.status equals 500, matches events whose JSON has that field. Combine with start-time to limit the window. Filters turn a wall of logs into a focus list of the events you actually care about. Search for what matters. If you want a quick practice, add logging to your handler. Import logging, get a logger, set its level to info, and emit an info message with the name and the AWS requested from context. Rezip, run update-function-code, invoke the function, and tail the logs. You should see your structured line appear live. That closes the loop: code change, deploy, invoke, observe. Close the loop. Thanks for learning where Lambda logs live. Next we clean up and wrap up phase A. The black box is open.